Hi, Himeutsugi here with the next episode of Solo TTRPGs Explained. In this episode, we will be examining NPCs or non-player characters in context of random NPCs that might be one-offs that you meet throughout your journey, or even NPCs that are part of your main character's party. Sometimes you might be playing a game where you could have a single character playing alone, adventuring alone, but sometimes it makes more sense to be part of a group, and you have to have a way to play those characters as well, right? Before I dive into those two different aspects of NPCs, I do want to touch on the Mythic GME. The Mythic GM Emulator is a pretty good catch-all for all the different systems that you might need when playing alone. It's meant to replace the GM, hence the GM Emulator, right? They have a section in their scenes big section called Generating NPC Behavior that I think sort of touches on both aspects. I'll read this part. It says, you figure out what an NPC does in your adventure the same way you figure out anything else in Mythic, with expectations, fate questions, and meaning tables. They have this very nice flowchart for how you generate NPC actions, but I want to kind of boil it down to use your expectations and improvise. This is really important because I have the personal philosophy that you don't have to roll for everything in a TTRPG. There's definitely expectations involved. If you walk into a tavern as an adventurer, you can pretty much predict that the vast majority of tavern keepers are going to welcome you in nicely, maybe not nicely depending on their personality, but they'll welcome you in and ask you what you want to order, right? And then they may have some plot hooks if you're new to the area and you're like, hey, what's been going on? And they may or may not have answers for that, right? But it's up to you and how you want that scene to go, in the sense of, do you want this to be the start of an adventure? Do you want the barkeep to tell you some rumors that might lead you somewhere? Or is this just sort of a one-off encounter? You just want to order some ale, get some food for the night before you go somewhere else? Or are you meeting somebody else here at that tavern, right? So it's up to you to assign how much importance this tavern keeper has. You don't necessarily have to roll on a bunch of oracle tables every time you meet someone. If you already have a clear expectation for how they're going to behave, it's easier to just run with that than try to add an random element of chance to everything, especially if it doesn't impact the adventure. So next I want to talk about random NPCs. I mean this in the sense of NPCs that you meet during your adventure that you are not always expecting. So, okay, I show up to this town, who comes and meets me on the street, or who do I bump into? Or okay, we go to the guild. Well, what type of adventurer from the other, factions are there now? So people that you don't plan for, and people who may or may not be important for an extended period of time. So the first way, of course, that you can deal with these random NPCs is by using whatever oracles are part of the game that you have. And especially if it is a game that has been made for solo, they often already have a lot of NPC tables. Crossed Paths, for example, is really good at this. They have a lot of tables that help you, okay, what kin is this NPC? What does this NPC want? What do they not want? And you can generate a lot of story threads from that. Or if you just purely want to know what type of person is it that I've run into, because we're not going to meet them again and we don't need any plot threads from this, you can just use those tables at the beginning. There's plenty of other games that do this as well. Black Oath games also have these sort of tables for when you run into NPCs. And so a lot of the games that are made to be solo already have this built in. And so, of course, if it's already there, go ahead and use it. Right? The next tool I'd like to talk about is Let's Talk by Dr. Gerald Ravenpie. Well, so Let's Talk bills itself as a standalone NPC dialogue system for solo role-playing. So this is really helpful because a lot of times solo TTRPGs kind of toe the line of being a creative writing exercise, but the fun, gamey part is for there to be some element of chance, some element of randomness, because if you just waltz into a town, you don't necessarily know if the NPC you run into is going to be friendly or give you true information or even want to talk to you at all. And so Let's Talk is very good at helping with that, helping you roll for, what tone do they have? How does the persuasion work? What happens if you're trying to lie to them? What happens if you get caught lying to them? And so there's a lot of different things that you can use these different tools that are part of Let's Talk that help with reading the room, party dialogue, etc., etc. So this is a tool that is specifically for dialogue with NPCs, and you can go very specific with it and role play or write the entire dialogue, or you can use this to just sort of be like, okay, I had a brief chat with the guild leader. They were in a pragmatic mood, and so they gave me some information, but they didn't sense that I was going to be very useful, so they didn't want to give me all the information. And that's all you have to write, because you rolled, and because you have a neutral relationship, you rolled that they were pragmatic in this particular moment. Right. The nice thing about Let's Talk is they even have a whole section with like an example of how it's used with little dialogue snippets and everything. So it is very useful, and the nice thing is that it's free, and so very easy to just pick up. This is something I use a lot. There's even a section at the end with these little mood cards that you can print and cut out and shuffle, so I think that's a lot of fun. This is one that is very useful for the random NPC that you just want to know, hey, what are we conversating about, right? Another one that I find useful for these sort of random NPCs is what's called the Universal NPC Emulator, or UNE. This is by Zach Best. Something that I appreciate about this one is that it does have an NPC creator as part of it. So it has tables with their personality. It has tables with like, okay, what is their power level compared to you? So if you decide like, I want to try to rob this person, okay, what is their power level? How difficult will it be to rob them? And then they have a motivation table. So this might be helpful for games that were not initially solo, or maybe they just don't have a very beefy like NPC table section, and this helps you with that NPC creation process. But it also has an NPC interaction emulator, kind of like Let's Talk, in that you can determine the relationship between the NPC and your character or whoever's speaking to them, and then go from there for like, okay, so based on that, there's other tables that you can roll on for, okay, so how is it going, right? And then also a focus, okay, what are they talking about? What are they interested in at this moment? So it can really help a lot. I think that this particular one, it skews a little bit more fantasy. You could definitely use it for everything, but if you look at a lot of the particular words used, I feel that this skews a little bit more fantasy than sci-fi, but still very useful in a lot of contexts for sure. A sub-genre of the random NPC is the recurring NPC, because sometimes, like just like in any manga or something, sometimes you generate an NPC and you intend for them to be a one-off, but maybe you get really attached to them and you're like, okay, well, I want to run into this NPC more, but how can I have that happen without just shoehorning them into every scene, right? So there's two ways that you can further incorporate NPCs and create what I call recurring NPCs. The first is going with Mythic. They have a threads and character lists feature where as you run into different characters or different plot points, so threads are more for plot points and your PC's goals, and the character list is for the NPCs that you run into over time. So you create these lists, you add to these lists over time, and then when you are rolling using Mythic, there are things you can roll on to see. For example, like let's say there's a random, you find a random clue and you would like to know, okay, is there an NPC that's connected to this clue? So you can roll your character's list, you get Bob and say, oh my gosh, this clue that I found, Bob knows more about it, or Bob's the one that left it here, right? So there's a way to naturally see, okay, is this clue or is this other person that I met connected to anybody that I already know? And I think that's a really handy way of doing it. There's something very similar to this in Alfred Valley's Thousand Empty Light solo adventure for Mothership. It's sort of a similar idea that as you run into characters or plot points, they get added to a list that you can roll on. So like maybe you make a list of 20 people, and of course there's a chance it's not connected to anything. So if you go this route, I would recommend populating this table with a couple of entries that are like nothing. Oh, this clue is not connected to anybody that I know. That way it's not always connected, because that could be a little bit too convenient, right? But these are ways that you can keep meeting these NPCs again. You could just have your character list, and let's say you go into a new town that you haven't been to before and say, hey, do I meet anybody here that I already know? Is there somebody traveling that I run into? Oh, it's Bob. Bob's here too, I think that's a fun way to have them come back into the story, but still have an element of surprise and you not knowing when they're going to be there or not. So As I said earlier, aside from the random NPCs, there's also your party NPCs. You know, one of the fun parts of playing D&D or other games like that is when you have a cast of characters to interact with. Or maybe, you know, if you are playing a sci-fi adventure, it doesn't really make sense for your character to be flying this huge starship alone, right? So maybe they could be the captain, but you still have to have a navigator and a gunner and all those things, right? So there are times where you want to have a party, an entire cast of characters that are recurring all the time, right? But again, maybe you don't want that to be just a creative writing adventure, right? So there's a couple of different ways that you can handle a party, right? So the first is the obvious one. You have one that's designated as your main player character. The rest you just roleplay. You maybe use some of those random NPC tools that I've already talked about and use that to set, okay, this is this character's motivation, this is their personality, and I'm just gonna role play from there. Just think about it. So when we go into this situation, how is Giselle going to react to it? Well, Giselle has a nervous personality. Her goal is to get justice for her father who was falsely accused, and so you can use that and lean into it. So in this scene, okay, she's nervous, so how would a nervous person react? Oh, like this. And then you can also roll for it using those tools as well. But generally, this is just you pick one to be your main character, and then the rest are the supporting cast that you RP in various ways. And some of the solo games even have different rules and mechanics for playing these sub-characters, shall we say. The second way, and this is what I do for my solo Fabula Ultima campaign, is by changing POVs. So instead of having one main character, they're all main characters and I just have them take turns. So my Fabula Ultima party has 4 characters, and so for every scene I assign one to be the main character, so all of the roles are from their perspective. All of the checks are, or most of the checks are from their perspective, and then I will role play or use the tools I'm about to talk about for the other 3, and then they all take turns. So that way they all get some inner monologue, some time to shine, and I don't have to pick just one to be the main. They don't feel like supporting characters. Everyone is sort of the main character of their own story. Now, beyond those philosophies, there are couple of tools as well that are useful in these situations that I want to talk about. The first is another one by Dr. Gerald Ravenpie, who did Let's Talk, which I talked about earlier. And this one is called Keeping Contact. Keeping Contact is specifically for relationship building, so it calls itself the standalone social system for solo role-playing. So this is a way for you to track a change in a character's attitude over time. So, you know, at first you're neutral. You guys just got together at the guild, you don't know each other yet, so it's neutral. And then, you know, then in a couple scenes later, you save your main player character, maybe saves that party NPC from a monster, like he pushes him out of the way, saves his life. Okay, well, we roll for it, because that was a pretty significant thing. Okay, great. Our attitude rating, or AR, has increased. And so as it levels up from neutral to like close, you know, neutral to friendly to like close friends, it can even go past that into romance. And so this is very reminiscent of, like, you know, the Atlas Persona games where you're leveling up your social link, or other games. I think Star Ocean, you know, has things like this. So this is definitely an RPG kind of aspect, but it's a good way to introduce the idea of an evolving relationship where, you know, you start off as strangers and you become friends, which would happen in an adventure naturally. And this is a way to sort of gamify it in a way that could be more meaningful. Along that same vein, I do want to touch on the final of the Dr. Gerald Ravenpie systems, and it's called Keep Talking. Keep Talking basically combines, if you couldn't tell from the name, it combines Let's Talk with Keeping Contact, and it's the newest one. And so if you like the idea of both of those systems, of having, Let's Talk for how am I going to conversate with these NPCs, but also Keeping Contact for how do I level up my relationship over time with these NPCs, you can use Keep Talking, which combines both. Except I think that it simplifies some things, and so I personally prefer to use the other two separately and just look at Keep Talking for some of the updated tables sometimes. But all 3 of these are completely free to use, so definitely have a look at them, download them, and just see what you can fit into your like gameplay loop, right? The other system or tool that I like to use a lot that is a little bit more simple is called Triple O. It is the it's a one-page player character emulator made by Cesar Capocli. And so this is the opposite of a GME. It is for a GM who needs to simulate players. And so I like this. It's a little bit more simplistic. You can't use this, well, you can, but it's a little more simplistic because rather than having a bunch of tables for like personality, motivation, it has spark tables for action, focus, disposition, motivation, and method. I like to use this one a lot for one-off NPCs too, but it also helps for recurring NPCs because you can roll for their current disposition or their current action, right? And so this one is nice because it's a lot simpler. It literally all fits on one page. And the reason why it's called Triple O is because when determining how a character would act in a given situation, you need to define their Triple O: the obvious, the option, and the odd. And that I love that philosophy. So the obvious is sort of like the expectations that Mythic talks about. It's like, given their traits, what is the most predictable course of action this character would take? The option is what's an alternative, like maybe less predictable, but something that this character might do. And then the odd is like the unexpected, right? And so then you can roll your Triple O check to see, okay, so does the character do what's expected of them? Something that's a little weird but still understandable, or the out of left field option, right? And so that introduces the randomness to it that is a nice balance if you want there to be, okay, yeah, I expect that the barkeep would do this, but there's a 1, because we use a d6, there's a 1 out of 6 chance that they're going to do that weird, odd action that you wouldn't expect from them. And so I think that having that option there is really fun, especially for one-off NPCs, but also I use that a lot for the party NPCs as well. Do they do what's expected? Or are they going to try something else in this particular situation, right? And so me personally, I tend to mix and match a lot of these, just given how much brain power do I have that day. But I hope that this gives you some ideas on how you might handle NPCs in your game, because there's so many different tools and so many different things you can use, but these are ways that you can create NPCs and characters that feel more rich, and they make your world feel more real and like you're playing a game, and it's not just that you're creative writing purely off of a couple of prompts. They give you more freedom while also introducing that element of chance and randomness that real life often has, and I enjoy that touch of realism. All right, that's going to be it for today's episode, so I hope you got something out of it, and I will see you in the next one. So in the next video, we will be touching on more recommendations, so we'll be talking about some journaling game recommendations in the next video. See you next time.